I'm good.
We're going to put you in the hot seat here, mate.
I've been living in the hot seat for most of my life.
Right. Okay, so we'll go this way, so makes it easier. Welcome. Good to see you again. Just introduce yourself to everyone here, please.
My name is Mick. As introduced, I'm the officer in charge of the Indooroopilly Highway Patrol. By way of history, I suppose, I've been a police officer, and forgive my maths, I just say since 1991 now because it's easier than doing maths. It's a long time. Since that time, I've really only spent about 3 years out of highway patrol or traffic. So the majority of my time has been doing traffic duties in various places around the state, from Brisbane, Warwick, Gympie, Mount Isa, and 3 different places in Brisbane. I've been the officer in charge here for the Indooroopilly Highway Patrol Unit for 10 years now. So I suppose I've been pigeonholed into that for quite a while, but it's where my passions lie. I know a number of the people here, have seen them in Mount Glorious and various locations. Most people know I'm into motorcycles, I'm into cars, I'm into all those sorts of things. So it's where my passions lie.
Thanks, Mick. We brought you along, obviously, invited you along here to do a little bit of a Q&A, because obviously there's a bit of a gap between, police and motorcyclists, and whether we like it or not, it's kind of that space there that we want to try and bring together and rebuild sort of relationships and get a better understanding on both sides as to where we're at. So we did put out to the motorcycle community and the members here as well a request if there were some questions that we would like to be able to ask you.
Yes.
Which is why you're in the hot seat.
That's all right.
I didn't think we had this conversation before. So if you could tell us a little bit about what yourself and your unit, what they're responsible for. What sort of jobs are you responsible for?
So in its simplest form, our job is to enhance road safety in the area, across the state of Queensland, but most focused for us is in our North Brisbane area here. Our only task is to reduce serious and fatal traffic crashes. That's what we want to do.
Do you have to go to those traffic crashes?
We do. So
are you the first point of call for that?
So generally, a call will come in, a triple O call will come in about a traffic crash, and generally if it's something serious, they will call the closest available unit. In many circumstances, I think most people here would understand our general duties people are under the pump, they're going to lots of different jobs and everything. So oftentimes one of the traffic units will be the first unit to be able to get there. Most of the time they're by themselves, and it can be quite taxing, quite confronting, and there's a lot of work to do at those serious crashes. So all of my troops
must be pretty traumatic for those guys.
And it is, and it has an effect on everybody. The constant attending those sorts of incidents, it takes a toll on people. I was reading just recently that the average person will have 2 to 3 critical incidents over the course of their lives. They're suggesting that police will attend about 800 in 20 years. So you take that into account, police go to a lot of terrible scenes where they're seeing things, experiencing things, and that people really don't want to see. And they're also there and they're present. Unfortunately, they're there and present for a lot of end-of-life scenarios. They can be the last person that somebody is talking to prior to dying. So it puts a lot of pressure on all of our officers.
And thanks for sharing that, because it's obviously a big part of your role. It's not just you guys standing there giving out tickets.
No, definitely.
out of curiosity, so, you know, a lot of the questions that came through, or the feedback that came through online as well as through the emails were around, you know, tickets are revenue raising, and, you know, it's obviously you guys have your quotas to meet and your KPIs and all that sort of stuff. You know, how do you know if your officers are doing a good job? Like, do you measure how many tickets they write, how many fines they issue or infringements?
So just so we get it on the record and everybody knows, there hasn't. Sorry, I can't say never. Since 1991, when I started in this organisation, there has been no quota. There has never been a quota since I have been in this job. The only KPI that I am judged on as in charge of my unit, the only KPI we're judged on is serious and fatal traffic crashes. It has nothing to do with how many tickets we write. It has nothing to do with how much revenue we make. None of that even enters into it. And just so you know, like, I have a unit of 19 people and myself. I haven't counted tickets for 10 years. I don't count the individual tickets that my officers write. It doesn't interest me. All I expect is them to be out there every day doing stuff. So people, and look, I understand, it's not just motorcycle groups, it's everybody in society who aren't police, I suppose. Say there must be a quota, there must be some way. There's just not.
So you know, obviously they attend a certain job, and then they've got paperwork to do from that sort of job and stuff like that.
Yes, and unfortunately over the years there's been a lot more paperwork required, which is an odd term considering we do it all on computer now, but there's been a lot more correspondence required. Recently the state got a new computer system. We've been using the last one for the last 18 years, and they've got a new interface to make it easier. It's not. It's not. It's taking everybody a lot longer to get everything done. But yeah, like there's a massive requirement for that office duty. So pretty much, you know, on an average 8-hour shift, the boys and girls will spend between 2 to 3 hours some days just trying to tick all the boxes and make sure everything's done.
Is that like tickets, ticking boxes, or just like paperwork and stuff, just like a job?
Yeah, for every couple of hours of work, it will be an hour or so. For example, I spoke to a person yesterday afternoon. He was using his mobile phone, so I stopped and had a chat to him and said, "Hey, have you got your driver's license here?" He goes, "No, I haven't got one." Thank you for being honest. But that requires me to give him a notice to go to court. That's the part that takes me 5 minutes to handwrite that, give that to him. I'm a little slower than most of the police. It'll take me an hour and a half to do the court brief to send to the court to get him done. So that's, you know, so we get a lot of people who don't have licenses, or they're, you know, unlicensed, disqualified, drink drivers, drug drivers. Every time somebody gets handed something, it's an hour and a half or more just to process that information.
So it's not like they're running out there going, "Oh, I'll get as many tickets as I can," because that's going to be like 25 hours worth of paperwork now.
Yeah, and for every 100 tickets you write, you may get about 5% contest matters in court, and that's a larger process of correspondence to do a full brief of evidence to provide to the person and provide to the court.
Sure.
So there's definitely a correspondence impost for enforcement duties.
Okay. So one of the questions that we had was, what do you see the biggest problems or challenges when it comes to motorcyclists on the road? What are you wanting to achieve by engaging with this community and in that process?
I said I've been doing this for a long time, so I've discovered that being on the wrong side of 50, I'm under my 3rd prescription of glasses now. So the biggest issue and challenge is just road user safety. And this is all road users, but we have to be particularly focused on vulnerable road users. And as motorcyclists, we are vulnerable road users. The biggest challenge I think we face is changing the attitudes of motorcyclists. We have to remember we're not invincible. We're actually more vulnerable than everybody driving a car. and we have to accept that we're responsible for our own safety. And unfortunately, a lot of motorcyclists want to blame other road users, but the reality is, statistically, the majority of serious and fatal traffic crashes involving motorcyclists, it is us as the motorcyclists who's at fault.
So just on that particular thing, because I appreciate that, you know, that we did give you some questions, so you had some time to prepare and understand exactly what it is that we're trying to do. So when you say the motorcyclists, it's kind of the attitude sort of thing towards road safety, do you find that it's kind of, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to race on the road, or are they just not caring, or is any of it road conditions or anything like that?
So because of this, I had a look at some recent forensic crash unit information relating to traffic crashes involving motorcycles. And a lot of motorcyclists will claim it's the road conditions that have led to crash, which is evident in less than 2% of the cases. And we have to kind of remember that we can say road conditions contributed to something, but where is our assessment of those road conditions and our driving to what those road conditions are? So road conditions represent a very small percentage of what it is, and unfortunately it's up around the 75% of serious and fatal motorcycle crashes. It's the rider of the motorcycle's fault. Most of them are single vehicle, and most of them, interestingly, happen in 60 zones. And I suppose, why does it happen in 60 zones? Because that's where all the twists are. That's where all the windy roads are. They're 60 zones. So we've got Mount Nebo, Mount Glorious, Mount Mee, and I always forget the name of the road that goes down through Natural Arch in the Gold Coast. Thank you. Great road. I always forget what it's called. So those areas, a lot of them are 60 zones. So that's why all the crashes are happening there, because people aren't riding to what the road is. They're not riding to the speed limit. They're not riding safely.
You know, it's interesting, and I'm just going to diverge a little bit, because we did a tour in Tasmania, and they've got roads very much like Nebo and Glorious, and they're posted at 100, but you can't, like, there's no way I can do 100 around this road, because it's just so twisty. So you have to, like, as a rider, I guess, you know, take in the corners and stuff like that. But human nature is we will always want to push the limits.
And unfortunately, as motorcyclists, that's one of the things that we do. We try to push that limit, have that excitement, have that interest, have that adrenaline rush. And, excuse me, unfortunately, that oftentimes ends badly.
Off the record, you've done that too, right?
Yeah.
Push the limit, stretch the limit. Let's be real.
Just so people know, like,
I'm not saying you've broken the law and
I have two motorcycles.
Yeah.
I have two of my own motorcycles. I've actually advised my wife there will be another one coming. I have classic cars, but the last 2 years in a row I've been to Tasmania. I've ridden to Tasmania, we've ridden around, they have some brilliant roads down there. I do it with a bunch of mates, most of whom are either current or retired police. We're really not anti-bike.
And you're not anti-fun either.
No, definitely not anti-fun. Definitely not anti-fun.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just got to be, you know, all I want to do is I just want people to live a long life and be riding motorcycles until they get to a point where they say, you know what, I just don't think I should be riding anymore. I spoke to one of the guys, regulars in Mount Glorious the other day, and he said he's had a couple of whoopsies in his driveway, and he said, you know what, I think it's probably time to give up the bike, so he drives his car up there now, right? But that's great, but he's gotten to that point in his life where he's been able to make that choice. It hasn't had an event because of poor decisions that has ended his life or ended his ability to ride motorcycles.
Do you think that though, like, you know, when we're having fun and we're in the zone and we're going through those bends and stuff like this, and maybe, you know, obviously stepping up to our comfort zone line and, you know, just challenging a little bit. See, something like that, even in a 60 zone, it could be a split second and it's changed forever, you know, whereas
That's right.
you don't plan that to happen. You don't deliberately go out there and go, I'm just going to go and, you know, off the cliff, but it just happens in a split second, and you know, that's kind of an accident, really.
I have a problem with accidents. There's been a body of international work around the word crash and accident. Accident invokes ideas of no control. Accident is something created by somebody else, an act of God, that sort of thing. Whereas crash, by necessity, has to invoke a sense of cause and effect, and also responsibility. So you're not alone. I'm actually arguing with a lot of people within my organisation to start using the correct words, because it's actually a crash, because 99 out of 100 crashes have a reason, a cause, and a sense of responsibility. There's always going to be outlying stuff, medical conditions, those sorts of things, but as a general reason, as a general guide, a crash has a reason, and that may be somebody's inattention for a very short period of time. Like, you know, I suppose a lot of us have been riding motorbikes for a long time. Some of the motorcycles we used to ride 30 years ago really weren't that powerful compared to some of the stuff now. Like, one of my motorcycles is quite a small capacity. It's an 800 adventure bike. It's harder to keep that motorcycle on the speed limit than my really old 1400. They're so fast, they're so powerful, you have to concentrate the whole time. It's one of the trade-offs.
Just the magic thing, concentrate, focus, and all the time.
It can be a split second, yeah, totally. Another question, what initiatives is QPS undertaking to bridge that gap between police and motorcycle riders?
Oh, I'm here. I've been going up to Mount Glorious for the last 10 years or so, trying to talk to people, trying to get people to understand that we just want people to survive, enjoy motorcycling, but be able to do it for the rest of your life. And if that means slowing down a bit, and I've said it to many people up there, if you have a license, if your motorcycle is registered, if you're under the speed limit and you're on your side of the road, that's most of the stuff. That's most of the stuff, and you're going to have a long, healthy, enjoyable life riding motorcycles. So I'm here. I was in a meeting yesterday with TMR about, and I see you've already accessed some of the Ride to Zero stuff. So that funding's being out there again for next year to be funded in 25. That's a great idea, and I would like to come along and see how those things are done. Like we as police motorcyclists get fairly extensive rider training, but it would be great to see other people get some more of that.
Do you think that that's an issue, that we don't have sufficient skills with the motorcyclists, which is a factor in the accidents?
Crashes.
I
do. Sorry.
Well, it's good. It's good because
it's hard to change. It's hard to change. I think as a state, as a country, I don't think we approach driver's licensing very well. We train our young people to pass a test.
Yes.
We don't train our people to drive and operate motor vehicles correctly.
You're talking both cars and
motorcycles. It's not singling out just motorcycles. Motorcycles have probably had it a little tougher since the Q-Ride program has changed, in that once upon a time, you know, when I got my license, you had to go to Department of Transport, you went out with one of their examiners, you did your riding test, you either passed or failed. Whereas now, you kind of go to a Q-Ride provider, and the issue I have is that I've known some people who have gone there, they've paid their fee, they've had their stuff signed off, and they couldn't ride a motorcycle. And I think that's dangerous for the rider as well as other people. I would like to see a system where all of our people for cars, motorcycles and trucks are trained better. I think there's definitely scope there to have a better training regime. So yeah.
If you ride a motorcycle, do you think that, in your opinion, does that help make you a better driver or more aware driver?
Personally, I think it does. I can ride around and I can tell somebody who's driving a car if they're a motorcyclist, because you can see them looking. You can see them looking because they're just used to everybody trying to crash into them. So at every intersection they're looking, whether it's red, green or whatever, they're looking.
Because now what they've done is they've stopped you from getting your motorcycle licence until well after you've got your car licence.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's 2 years after your P's or 3.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can't get it in the first year. Yeah. So I think that's going to change, and I think personally, I think what it will do is it'll probably actually dissuade many people from obtaining a motorcycle license. A lot of people I grew up with, they went to a motorcycle license because they could afford a bike, not a car. And I think a lot of people may not even give it a go now. They spend the first couple of years driving a car and go,
Why?
well, the new Beamers can be automatics, aren't they? Yeah.
So, just so that we can be aware of time, the job of law enforcement obviously is designed across all road users, except there's sort of a little bit of inconsistency with regards to defects on bikes and being pulled over. So we've had a few questions around, obviously we had a discussion about the rear reflector that wasn't on the back of my bike, and yet it had just passed Wovey and it just passed roadworthy. And how can we get these defect tickets if someone buys a bike from T-Moto, drives out, and then 2 minutes down the road they get pulled over for not having a rear reflector, but it's been passed for roadworthy. So there's gaps in the system, we can understand that.
Yeah.
How does that justify the law enforcement side of things?
Look, there's a lot of parts to that. And I suppose if we look at it from a dealer perspective, and I've spoken to a number of dealers over the years, and one of the things I was talking to dealers about was the fitting of non-compliant exhausts at the dealership. And the dealers were kind of saying, yeah, but if they want to pay for it, we tell them it's not right, but if they're paying for it, we'll fit it. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. And they said they'll just get it somewhere else. I said, yeah, I get that, but you shouldn't be doing it. And they're like, but it's our business. If they want to buy something from us, we'll fit it.
But if it's to Australian standards or compliant in the standards legislation, is it just on bikes? Because obviously exhausts go on cars as well.
Yeah, and as far as exhausts go, it's actually really, really simple in the vehicle standards, which is the book that roadworthy people rely on, the vehicle standards. If you change the efficiency or the effectiveness of the exhaust, it's no longer compliant. So it applies to cars, it applies to motorcycles.
Why are motorcycles targeted for those sorts of things, do you feel?
Well, I don't think they are targeted.
Just because it's roadworthy doesn't mean it's safe.
The roadworthy is more about it being safe, not necessarily compliant. And unfortunately, the way the legislation is written is that the owner or rider, driver, is responsible for the vehicle.
But I guess from let's be reasonable. Not every person is going to go and read the motor vehicle compliance legislation, and so they go to the dealer or and they can put a new exhaust on, or buy a bike without a rear reflector, and they ride it out, and then they're just kind of like, well, going, I just bought this bike.
Yeah, and what's happened in most of those instances, and look, I have purchased a motorcycle that when I purchased it, I looked at it and said, look, I know it doesn't have a proper mudguard on it. So as soon as I bought it, I had to go and buy a mudguard to put on the motorcycle. It had a roadworthy certificate.
But you knew that.
But I knew it, but I have probably a different knowledge set to the average person. Now, what I've discovered after trawling through many instances and interactions with cars and motorcycles and my troops is that most of these defects are actually dealt with by the officers giving the driver or rider I'll call it a DVRN, which is a defective vehicle repair notice. Now, what that is a notice saying this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. You need to fix it by this date. Now that defective vehicle repair notice doesn't have a penalty attached to it. It has no monetary penalty and it has no points attached to it. You can, now depending on what they are, you can get a ticket at the same time, which is the monetary penalty with the points. Doesn't always happen. In fact, more often than not, for those sorts of things, it'll be a list of things. And sometimes the list can be good. And just so you know, motorcycles might get a few things listed. Think about it this way, a car's much bigger. There's lots more things that can be modified and be wrong and everything like that. Most of the modified really low cars or modified really high cars get a lot more attention from a defect perspective than what motorcycles do.
That's good because some of those fall
Okay, so we're going to be conscious of time. A lot of this is designed around bridging the gap between, you know, QPS and motorcycle riders, and I'm sure you would be aware of the fact that a lot of our motorcycle riders are very well known gentleman by the name of Wilco, who used to be a mountain cop. And was he policing in your unit?
Yes.
Okay. And were you aware of the tickets and, you know, the perceptions that the motorcyclists had about him and the difficulties or challenges that were there at the time?
Yes.
Okay. So can you explain why he was allowed to be, excuse my language, but be a real bastard?
The thing is, people would get upset about Wilco. Yes, he may have had a reputation as being harsh, but he really wasn't anywhere near as harsh as he could have been. I watched literally hundreds of his videos, literally hundreds of his interactions with people, and most times he would explain to the motorcyclist or car driver, these are the things that you have done wrong. This is what I'm giving you a ticket for, and this is what I'm telling you not to do again. Okay? This is what's wrong. And he would go to great lengths to explain all the things that are wrong so that you could rectify them.
Do you think it was just maybe the mannerism that he had that came across as being a bit rough that got people offside?
Potentially. He was very, dry is not the word, but very...
black and white.
He was very black and white, but he was also quite even in his temperament. And many of the videos I watched had people deliberately trying to incite him, yelling at him, calling him names, trying to get him up. And I think there was an element of frustration because he just kept a deadpan voice the whole time. And that caused a lot of frustration. Interestingly, I think his reputation got a lot bigger than he actually is. I gave a lady on a motorcycle a ticket for speeding in the 40 zone, you know, the really twisty part before you get to the goat track. 45 minutes later, I was at the cafe having a coffee and she came up to complain about the ticket she got from Wilco. And I said, you know that was me. And she said, no, it was Wilco. No, it was actually me. It was only half an hour ago or 45 minutes. It was definitely me. She's like, no, it wasn't. It was actually Wilco. Okay. So the thing is, I used to watch the Facebook feeds and things like that, and there would be references of him being in the mountain, and he was on holidays in another country. So I think and it really is. It is funny because his reputation and his presence was a lot more than he actually did, and that's.
Well, that's good if you can have the fear of being there rather than.
And that's the thing. I looked at lots and lots of videos. People would make complaints, and I'd look at. I actually invited a lot of people who made complaints come in and watch the video with fresh eyes. Now that you've calmed, relaxed, come in, watch the video, and they watch it and they go, "That's not how I remembered it." So.
Were they emotional at the time? Obviously,
and I get it. For somebody who gets pulled over, it's an emotionally draining time. You've been stopped doing what you want to do. You've been told you're doing the wrong thing. You know it's going to cost you some money. You're going, oh, this is just a shit day. Oops.
So the officer comes along and goes, smash.
Right? So you're going, oh yeah. So look, it's just turning a shit day. It's a very emotional thing. But then when you can potentially come and have a look at it later, you go, actually, that's not how I remembered it. You know, I've had car drivers come in and I say, look, the video shows you on the phone. They go, oh, I was on my phone. And they come in and they look at it and they go, wow, I was using my phone. So people...
Because emotions will throw people out.
Emotions and feelings taint your view. I think video cameras are the best thing we ever got for that very reason, because it can actually show the actuality of the interaction, not the emotion of it.
So why don't we get let off with a warning anymore?
So the warnings are very difficult. There's actually a thing that is it's in our internal QPS policy, and it's called the traffic manual. We're guided by that in many of the things that we do, where we conduct enforcement, how we conduct enforcement. And one of the important things in there that people probably aren't aware of is that the traffic manual says that we can't give warnings for life endangering offences. Now that's is an easy way to do it. That's stuff that has a point. If it has points, there's variations, but as a general rule, if the things have points, we can't give you warnings for them. So,
otherwise you lose your job, right?
And I had one of my officers who gave somebody a warning, and he had a complaint in relation to another matter. So in a review of some videos, he was seen to give somebody a warning. After 12 months of sitting in the office and having no overtime and no shift duty and stuff like that for 12 months, worked out the average cost to his for that complaint was about $40,000. So, if we get into trouble for doing the wrong thing, we're not going to do the wrong thing. And unfortunately what that means is that if somebody's speeding, they're going to get a speeding ticket. And that's another thing, like, they'll use speeding for an example. People will go, well, you're saying it's 73. Like, that just puts me into the next bracket. Well, can't you just drop it one? Why don't you just add one? There'd be no difference. Like, so you kind of got to get what the evidence is. We can't just make stuff up. And a lot of people complain about that.
Yeah. So how do we bridge this gap? How do we kind of close this angst between, because we've got motorbike riders out there that are going to the QPS and QPS are going like, how do we kind of work better together?
I think a lot of it is probably recognising that motorcyclists aren't being targeted. In fact, there's a lot less enforcement on motorcycles compared to other vehicles. So I think maybe changing some of that perception and recognising that the legislation is there. It's really a non-negotiable. We don't control the legislation. The legislation is owned and created and looked after by TMR and government. But we have to enforce it. We're duty bound to enforce it. So really the legislation is non-negotiable. we're not out there trying to ruin people's fun. We want people to have fun, but we want people to have fun within the rules of legislation for everybody's safety, because we just want people to keep going.
Great. Thanks so much for your time, Mick. It's really good to have you along and appreciate your time on this. Thank you.